When it comes to environment, what do mayors do? Well, they do a lot for our cities. I know one thing they do is help bring environmentally sound projects that increase the quality of life of their constituents. Let me see if I can get Councilman Corey A. Reeves and State Representative Mandisha A. Thomas to help us get some more information on what mayors do for our environment.
Greetings, I'm Mandisha Thomas, State Representative for Georgia 65th District, and thank you for attending the Georgia Environmental Justice Education and Awareness Symposium. This is the Mayoral Roundtable, and we're in beautiful East Point, so I'm going to start off with Mayor Ingram.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the great city of East Point, where there's no point like East Point. And I'm excited to be a part of this roundtable with my friends and colleagues. Mayor Williams.
Well, I'm glad to be here. That's Edwards.
Bill.
She called you William. She called you William.
Yeah, totally different too. But I'm glad to be here. This is an exciting conversation and one that needs to be had all around, and we all are in good proximity to each other. Ways we can help each other with environmental issues. So I'm very happy to be engaged in the conversation.
And I am Vince Williams, the mayor of Union City, excited to be here, but always excited to be with my colleagues. We are certainly working together on a lot of initiatives in this county, but certainly in this region, and certainly glad to be here with our representative, Representative Mandisha Thomas, and looking forward to having this discussion as to how we can continue to address many of the plagues, if you will, of environmental injustices. So thank you for having me.
I'm Mayor Bianca Motley Broom of the City of College Park, where we're building the community that we deserve. I'm thrilled to be here with my colleagues from the South Fulton region to talk about this incredibly important issue, because environmental justice is something that touches us all. And a lot of the solutions are not ones that stay within city boundaries. We have to have collaborative solutions to address the problems that our residents are facing.
Thank you. And Mayor Williams alluded to this earlier, that we have the same boundaries and we cross over a lot. So we try to work together. And I just want to take this time for each of you to just discuss what are some environmental issues that may be going along in your footprint.
Well, I think Mayor Williams and I can talk about that. We talk about the economic development crisis that's going on with all of our cities. How it impacts major cities. And he and I have talked about things, and sometimes people don't do the right things, and we have to get together and force them to do it. And I think environmentalists go beyond the land and the water and the air and stuff like that, but it also has a lot to do with noise. And it has a lot to do with emissions in terms of transportation. And so, Mayor Williams and I had some long conversations about what do we do. We've done things on our side as prohibit trucks from going on certain streets. That has helped a lot, but truck drivers can't read. So they continue.
We're not going to say that.
She's done the same thing, and the mayor of Fairmont, she's done the same thing. So we're looking at that aspect. We don't want people to understand that the environmental justice goes beyond those three major factors.
Right.
The emissions from trucks and cars, and also noise that humans get inside. So we have those conversations.
Right, and certainly with noise, being right at the back door of Clarksville, all of us can certainly understand that noise component. But, with a lot of the developments that we have in Union City, we've taken a huge hit from community members that they don't want to see this, don't want to see that. But you have to look at what we have done, and that is create jobs. The facilities themselves are not an injustice. It's just some of the components that may make them up, such as trucks and different things like that, and emissions from trucks. But there are ways to mitigate all of that. And what we do as local leaders, we work with those developers before those things are done. Now, afterwards, there are things that we have to do, because the truck drivers are not necessarily in play until it's time for them to start picking up delivering and dropping off, the products and goods and services that they pick up from the locations. But as Mayor Edwards stated, it is incumbent upon the local government to make sure that they are policing, if you will. Better policing, making sure signage, no trucks allowed in this subdivision, down this street. And those are things that really help mitigate some of the issues with emissions, but also traffic injustice, if you will.
That's what you were. That's good. There's some other things we didn't get a chance to get to it this year. But we put the speed cameras in for schools, right? Well, that company can do the same thing for a truck. But we have to have it okay through the legislature. Right. So we won't be dealing with this year, but next year it definitely is going to come up. We're going to have a discussion about it, so that we can get some of those the trucks off the wrong streets. Right. Back to the issue.
Yeah. I think Mayor Edwards brings up a great point about noise because it's certainly a big issue in our community. We're actually partnering with a fellow from University of Georgia, and that maybe she's female, but a fellow. And through the Georgia Municipal Association, who's helping us deal with some of the environmental justice issues surrounding noise in our communities, because we have a good swath of one of our particular wards that is directly impacted by the noise from the airport on a minute by minute basis. So it's incredibly important that we're thinking about how the quality of life of our residents is impacted on a minute by minute basis, really. And the FAA is asking for comments right now on their latest study in regard to that. So we will be we're crafting our response right now because it's so important that our communities are a part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, and being, of course, neighboring cities of College Park, we've had the airport noise issue for a while and had an airport noise task force to kind of work with. We met with Senator Ford back then, environmental attorneys, really trying to figure out how we deal with these issues of noise that have really impacted the structure of homes of our residents. And, the challenges is back in the day when they received the abatement to be able to improve their homes, they gave a perpetual easement to the airport to be able to fly over their home, right? Mm-hmm. But there are people who bought the home since that happened and weren't aware of it. So it's been something that we've been trying to address for a while. We also received a brownfield assessment grant from EPA, and so we have over 150 brownfields identified in the city of East Point. So just prioritizing which one of those we will, partner with to assess and contribute to that process. Of course, it has to be a project or development that has a community benefit. Mm-hmm. And being in a city where our forefathers planned for us to be industrial, so you'll see a lot of industrial uses throughout our city. But what happened back then when those industrial uses were created, there wasn't really residential around them, except for when they, on July 15th, 1912, East Point City Council passed the ordinance unanimously requiring all the black people in East Point to live right next door to 3 fertilizer plants, an oil plant, and steel plant. And it was so stink, they called it Stink Town. It's actually this area that we're sitting in now, which is known as the East Washington neighborhood area.
So that's what I smell.
Probably, hopefully not since 1912, but if that's the day, maybe it feels. But, that was kind of how we enter into this environmental injustice, right? Requiring, and literally, if you were black and in the city and you didn't move into this 45-acre tract of land where we sit now, then you had to move out the city. There were no other options because white people came in and said they didn't want black people living next to them, right? The unanimous ordinance by the council, which was a year before Atlanta passed their racial segregation ordinance, and 16 years before the Georgia legislature actually amended the Constitution to allow it throughout the state of Georgia. So that happened in 1928 for Georgia. 1913 for Atlanta, and 1912 for East Point. So unfortunately, I think we led the way in the wrong way. And what we have been doing is really being committed to an equitable growth and inclusion plan, working with Partnership for Southern Equity to look at equitable industrial land use, inclusionary housing, and economic opportunity. And so what does that mean? Last year, on February 13th, we put in a moratorium on industrial land uses, so light industrial, heavy industrial, and business parks. And that lasted through December 29th, which was the day that we passed a suite of ordinances, about 8 ordinances, that changed uses by right in the industrial, light industrial and heavy industrial, so like manufacturing and those more polluting type businesses no longer are allowed as a matter of right. They have to get a special use permit. And that has to come before council, and we have to, make a decision as to whether or not it's in line with the way we want to grow. We also created 2 new industrial zoning districts, mixed use, commercial industrial, and warehouse industrial. And in the warehouse industrial, we actually put in community benefit language, like requiring, if we're going to give you incentives and if we're going to help make this work, then you got to make sure there's some benefit to the community, like livable wages, like, contributing to our East Point paths, like making sure that there's also environmental requirements in there. You have to provide the plan that you're supposed to have as it relates to spills. Like, it's no longer we have to ask you for it, it's in the ordinance. So that's our ask. Even whenever you come in, like, you need to have that. I mean, we've had spills. We've had a number of things that have happened in the city that I think have prompted us to be at this juncture where we are and have to really be committed to environmental justice, not in just what we say, but what we do. Because of industrial land use in a portion of our town, which is adjacent to this area, the state has designated as an impaired stream. So what does that mean? We now have to take taxpayers' dollars to remediate what the business didn't remediate while they were there making a profit, right? And so, thankfully, I serve on the council where the majority of the council is committed to making sure that we are moving forward. We didn't get into it overnight. We won't get out of it overnight. But we are working on that plan and being more equitable and inclusive, where equity and inclusion is more than a cliche, and where environmental justice and equity are requirements through our ordinances and through, the expectations of the developments that come in.
Right.
Mayor, I think you hit on the fact that all of us are sitting at this table and some regardless of our age, I think I'm the only one here. But
you think that's good. It's good to think that.
but we all have an obligation to be environmentally sensitive. When I was growing up, my house was right across the street from what we call the incinerator. Well, the garbage and stuff was taken in. Back in those days, they had what's called clothesline.
Right, yeah.
And on Thursdays, you would burn trash and the soot. You couldn't hang your clothes out on Thursdays because the soot would come over and be on the sheets and stuff. But we also had what do you call it, sewer situation over there. A sewer place. But all these things, like you said, all came in the African American community. So we have to have an obligation to be environmentally sensitive. And there's a lot of things we do. She even said a ton. But simple things too, like we got to deal with this issue of buffer. I think that's very important that we buffer ourselves off required in our regulations that we have these things. The other thing is that when we require stuff that we mandate, then we make sure we expect. I got a fire been burning for 4 years. Thank God thank you and the city and everybody who's come out to help me. But I got a fire in what was not supposed to be a landfill. All right, supposed to be something else, but has developed into a landfill. It had a fire under the ground. And we've been trying to put that fire out, and it's been smoke has been traveling from schools over Union City, over Cedar Garden, and we've been fighting it today, and the representatives take that. So we have to make sure that we up front have those guidelines in to protect ourselves, and then make sure that we have the personnel to inspect what we say.
So we're back with the mayors of the South Fulton region, and we're talking about environmental justices and injustices. And right now we're picking up on equity and what is equitable in your cities. Mayor Bianca?
No, I think we need to start with Mayor Holiday Ingram on this one. She's working with the Partnership for Southern Equity, and
Yes.
I have to say that the work that they're doing at East Point over this is, in regard to this, is just, it's groundbreaking work, and we are following in their wake. Just sat down with Nathaniel Smith from the Partnership for Southern Equity yesterday to talk about how we start moving in that direction in our city. But East Point's laying the groundwork for it. We really are.
Well, we are, thank you, Mary, but we're building the plane while flying, actually, honestly. And literally, like I said, I think the way that we're situated and the way that we develop, so I shared the story of Stinktown, aka East Washington neighborhood, and how it started. But not only is there industrial here, industrial spread through other areas of the city, right? And so, and then we came and put residential across the street. And so when you talk about it, and as all of us as mayors, like the situations that we have are situations we inherited. But it becomes a point where you're like, we gotta press pause, we have to develop differently, and we have to address some of the issues that we've inherited. And so, for us, it was starting with the National League of Cities, Healthy People Thriving Communities initiative. We were part of that pilot to look at affordable housing, planning and design, and economic mobility and opportunity. And that's literally really what got us going, right? We knew we needed to do something, didn't know what it needed to be. I knew that it needed to be a council commitment, because if you're going to do this work, you have to have buy-in from the beginning. And so that's kind of what catapulted us. And so through that initiative, we adopted a resolution supporting healthy cities and thriving communities and equity, and creating an equity ad hoc committee. And from that, we realized that because of the way that this region is developing, like we literally had to build a plane while flying, and we needed to get in some experts, some people who've been doing the work, because this is not the way that things are done, and this is not the way that the industry, the even public sector views development, right? Like we talk about equitable revitalization and equitable redevelopment, but really right there, there's not a model, right? It is literally people doing a little bit in pieces here. And so met Nathaniel Smith with Partnership for Southern Equity. We did a solicitation. They were brought on board as a consultants to help us with this work, to create a strategic plan. And right after that, we put the moratorium in place. And so they've been extremely flexible. But what we know is that we, in addition to the 3 buckets I mentioned, this work doesn't last unless we get the community involved. So while we're learning and while we're growing as it relates to equity, we've also had a number of initiatives for the community. So we had the Summer of Equity series, listen and learning sessions, where there were big idea Zoom sessions on like community benefit agreements, different environmental things, and then also had listening sessions at parks. We started Equity Leaders Academy. So we picked about 4 to 5 people from each ward to participate in that. And so they're going through the Equity Leaders Academy, learning, these concepts and helping to inform the community about this work. There's actually a couple town halls coming up this next week around equity, right? Because the reality of it is, in order for systems to change, you have to build inside out, and you have to grow up from the bottom up, and you have to make sure that residents understand the work, because it is different. And so we've done some things with our ordinances. We're still looking at inclusionary zoning, a community benefits ordinance, looking at, more ways to make sure that we put it in place so that businesses and developers, as they come, they already know what we expect. And you're not dealing with it when the project is in front of you. It's kind of challenging to deal with it in that way. But also the community aspect. And we have a development that is coming right behind the MARTA station. It's about 26-acre development that will be an equitable development. They're going to really infuse health and entertainment and retail and residential and all of it, connect to our East Point path and connect to our downtown.
Food insecurity.
Food insecurities, right? Really, we have a Market 166 co-op generated by residents, and I'm a member too, right? So to deal with the food insecurity issue and basically the opportunity for food access, this development is willing to offer free space for the co-op to have a store, right? So we also own a little under 9 acres in downtown East Point, right across the street from our city hall. That would be an equitable development, right? So it's really, these things take time, but there's a lot that we can do before things get out of the ground to make sure that we're laying the groundwork and setting clear expectations about what it means to develop equitably and inclusively in East Point. So, everybody that's there. And I think when we talk about environmental justice and equity, like we have to educate more people around what it means, and especially people of color. Because if we're in these positions and we can't improve the outcomes and create more equitable and inclusive communities for people in our communities, then what are we doing, right? W.E.B. Du Bois said, the Negro race, like all other races, will be saved by its exceptional men, and I add women, right? We got to save ourselves. And we have to be the ones that are advocating for those things that will actually do that for our communities, even if it's different. And people might say we're crazy, but we're not crazy, we're courageous.
Well, so kind of what you're saying is you want to be like equalizing our communities, equalizing the community, correct? And
I don't know if it's equal, right?
Well, the basic reality of the dream is everybody to own a home ownership, right? To have a home,
If
right?
they want,
own the land.
not necessarily own.
Everybody owns their own home.
Because everybody doesn't want to be
Everybody doesn't want to be a homeowner.
That's true.
Well, I mean, there are some days where I don't want to be a homeowner.
Right.
Like today.
I rented housing for 5 years before we built the house. Right? So like you gotta have apartments.
Right.
You gotta have the full town, you gotta have the full
But
continuum.
what about the livable wage worker who wants to be a homeowner?
Well, you know what I want to see? What I want in our city is, I think of someone who comes to work for our city. As most municipalities, we don't pay what you would make in the private sector.
Right.
But I want that 20-something person who starts working as a clerk in City Hall or as a police officer in our community to be able to find housing in our community. And as they grow, as they develop, finding that opportunity at every stage of their life within our community. Whether you are starting out a job, starting a family, winding down, and as a senior, finding a place to age in place, because that's vitally important too. Because in our city, we have a lot of seniors who are living in a particular ward where they might have half-acre lots, 2,500, 3,000 square foot homes that at this point in their lives are a little bit too much to manage, but love our community, want to contribute and continue to stay in the community. But we don't really have that answer now. So it's not necessarily always about owning a home, but finding a space within the community of having it for the members of the community, no matter where you are.
Right. You should have mentioned something about the square footage. And the new concept, or pretty old concept, is the seniors aging in place need less space, right? So about, say, tiny homes or cottages or things of that nature. How do y'all feel about that into bringing that into the city, your municipality?
We approved it. It still hasn't come out the ground. Nothing has been done on it, right? But we have the East Point Housing Authority that just opened a phase 1 senior new development for our seniors in our city apartment complex. Over off of 166, they'll have I think at least 2 phases to that. So we're creating more senior housing. We already have Norman Berry Village and Gateway. So we have senior housing for seniors who want to downsize, to be able to, make that choice if that's their choice. But we still need more. Again, you have to continue to maintain the necessary mix that is needed for people to literally grow from childhood to aging in place, to be able to be in your city for the life cycle. I'm not opposed necessarily to tiny houses or eco cottages. I just know we approved one about 4 years ago, and it's 3 years ago, and it still hasn't broken dirt, right? So,
and I'm not opposed to that, but one of the most egregious environmental justice elements that we don't do well at, and that's all of us, and that is attacking true homelessness. Mm-hmm. If COVID has taught us anything, we have a huge growing homeless population. Mm-hmm. And I think as cities and as city leaders, as state representatives, but also states, period, we need to put a real true emphasis on how do we help those individuals. It could be eco cottages, where we can make sure that those men and women and children who are living in our communities, sometimes in the dark lurches, and a lot of folks are really complaining of disruption, but they are not a disruption. These are people that we need to focus on if we are going to really do what environmental justice is all about. And that is making sure that everyone has a safe home to live in. When you think about the children, some of them are living in extended stay hotels, where they're paying rent every day, but they can't afford it, so what are we doing? And we're not doing a good job at that. So that's something that I think we need to focus on as we move forward in growing and providing for our communities, making sure that they're not only livable wages, but accessible wages for men and women who are out of work, because we don't know why a lot of these folks are homeless. Yeah. We got mental health issues. We got there are a number of individuals who are homeless right now who have PhDs. And so how do we address those issues? What we're doing in Union City, we're really putting a real focus on truly addressing homelessness. I know we're talking about equity and inclusion and environmental justice. All of those things really meet at the intersection of humanity. Absolutely. So those are things that we truly got to address.
I think that homelessness, there's so many ways that the problem is masked.
Yeah.
Whether people are doubling up or tripling up in places, whether they're living in cars or the extended stay issue, where people are often paying more than they would pay in rent for any given apartment.
But usually what happens is because their credit is so jacked
exactly.
up.
Or they've got an eviction on their record.
Exactly.
And so once you get that one eviction on your record, you literally are completely wiped out from a certain level of apartments that will not look at you. Yeah. And so I was a judge in Fulton County Magistrate Court. We saw it all the time. Having that eviction is like a scarlet letter. And it impacts the outcomes that you get not only in housing, but employment in so many other different ways. And that is directly impacting our communities on a daily basis.
And let me say, and I want to recognize you for all your efforts in terms of agriculture and helping us to save land to make it useful in terms of planting fruits and vegetables and having community gardens. So you done a great job in that. And I want to say that to you.
Thank you.
Did you want to share about the marketplace that's coming?
Well, there is a store that's coming April through August. We're looking for a location in South Fulton. If anybody knows, I know Mayor Ingram has. But it's a project in conjunction with Commissioner Black over agriculture and Congressman David Scott. We share a lot of the same district. So it is through some CARES money, and it's a specialty block grant. So we're bridging South Fulton farmers to South Fulton, Georgia. And so they will be participating, and our farmers will be participating. How we have it set up is a win-win for everyone because it's not based on point of sale for our farmers. Right. The store would actually purchase their food every week. And whatever is left will be recycled back into the South Fulton region. So we'll still eat off of it, even if it's not purchased in the store. Right. So you'll be receiving more information about that, and I hope I can partner with you all on that. And I think that is a great segue to the end of the Environmental Justice Roundtable for our mayors of South Fulton Region. I appreciate you all being here today, and Councilman Reeves for coming in and co-hosting with this, and looking forward to hear more from you on saving our environment.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good job. But we do want to afford y'all each 1 minute, 60 seconds of a closing remark. That you would like. I'll take it.
Well, I would just simply say that this has been interesting to sit with other mayors and find out what they've been doing and how can I incorporate it in my city, and just discussing how you handle issues as an educational process for me. So I appreciate being involved.
I just want to say thank you for having this forum for us to be able to come and discuss such an important issue, because our communities are the ones that are hit the hardest when it comes to environmental justice or injustices.
Right.
So those are the things we got to continue to lead on, but also stand in front of as we continue to lead our communities. So thank you again for having us, and look forward to further discussion.
I would echo those sentiments. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss these issues, because, as you can see, we're all passionate about them, and we're all committed to improving the outcomes for our communities. And I can't say enough how much I enjoy working with each of the folks at this table, because they really make this process of governing so enjoyable. I just love them all.
Ditto. But I think it's great to be able to have this conversation and to let people know that we are thinking, and not only thinking, that we are making efforts to ensure environmental justice, and that we are making decisions, right, and leading with people in mind, and that, it's not maybe what people think, but this gives a different window or a lens to look through, to know that the mayors of South Fulton and our cities are committed to people, and committed to, environmental justice, equity, inclusion, and really putting people over profits, politics, and party, right? Like in the work at the local level, I think the reason why we're able to, come up with real solutions is because we are nonpartisan. This is not about a party; it's the people.
It's about the people.
It's about the people, right? And I think this opportunity, this roundtable, provides an opportunity for people to understand that we are aware, that we're working, that we are leading with people in mind, and that, I always say teamwork makes the dream work, and we have an awesome team of mayors in the South Fulton area. They're my buddies.
And remember, there's no point like East Point.
Exactly. Thank you. See my buddy.
We'll end on that note, and we thank you all for tuning in and watching this. And as you can clearly see, we can bring all of them to the table. No matter what it is, they're here at the table.
No matter what.
To each other.
All right.
Thank you.